Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 4DMethod 4D user group. Today's August the 2nd, 2023. This is meeting number 66. On our agenda today, we're going to chat a little bit about what the 4DMethod user group is, talk a little bit, highlight some of the upcoming user presentations. We'll get a quick review of the 4D Happy Hour from Kirk Brooks, and we'll have Jim Sobczak from 4D tell us a little bit about what's going on with 4D, the company. And we'll mention a couple items that came out on the 4D V20 release that just dropped recently. We'll have highlight a couple of the 4D blog articles that just came out, largely about version 20 R2. A lot of times they're just about the R versions, which is great, so we can get a sneak peek of what's coming out, what's around the corner. Then we'll talk about a couple of items, a couple of recent tech notes, white papers in the 4D knowledge base. And then we'll have our special topic presenter on the ULO component, user listing with ORDA. We've got J. Douglas Cryer, Dougie, here to show us a few things today. Again, this is the 4DMethod user group. My name is Brent Raymond. I'm a career 4D developer amongst other technology and programming languages. I organize the 4D user group. Our website, it can be found at 4dmethod.com, and I can be reached at 4dmethod@gmail.com. I am really excited about all things 4D, and started this user group many years ago at this point, just to bring together the scattered community of 4D developers and users all over the world. This is what we do to provide fresh new content for us all, to share what we're doing, to give developers like yourselves exposure for your skills and just get to show it off. It's a platform for users and developers like yourselves out there. Just sharing programming techniques, and I get a real kick out of just seeing where 4D is deployed in the world, what it's doing out there. A lot of times it's running companies right around the corner from you, and it's just fun to see what can be done with 4D. Everybody takes it in different directions. It's not just for museums. It's not just for warehouse applications. It does all kinds of crazy roles out there in the world. So and seeing what people do with it can give you and me great ideas of what to do with our own applications. This group is supported by yourselves, but it's also great to get a little bit of support via the Patreon platform. You can support via Patreon at patreon.com/4DMethod. We have a few different categories of Patreon support. At the first level, it's the Mitarbeiter. That's a co-worker in German. Mike Betty is a new Mitarbeiter. He's from Objective Systems, as we all are familiar with him in the 4D services arena. And we have a great new supporter at the consigliere level, our own Dougie Cryer, who's going to present to us today from Telekinetics. I'll say a little bit more about J. Douglas Cryer in a bit, but really appreciate the great supporters who help out to pay for some of the costs that keep things running for the website and whatnot. So like we mentioned, this is your group. This is a platform for you to show off your applications, your products, just some things you're working on. Coming up September 20th, we'll take a look at OG Dev Tools, tools and code introspection for 4D developers. That's from Olivier Grimbert. So that's going to be exciting to see what his component does. You can see what other dates are coming up for the 4DMethod user group at 4dmethod.com/schedule. We do have an open date for you to present on November 8th. You can also, sometimes it's just nice to record a demo, and you can have a little bit more control over it instead of doing it live in one of these user groups. So if you'd like to, just record something, and we can post it and direct some attention to your great work. So again, check out the schedule at 4dmethod.com/schedule. And now I'm going to hand it over to Kirk Brooks to talk a little bit about the 4D happy hour that he organizes each week.
Well, thank you, Brent. And, once more, thank you for including me here. I am going to echo Dougie's comment. I do see an awful lot of familiar names here on the board right now for attendees at 4D Happy Hour, which is real gratifying. And of course, Doug has been a long-time participant and a very active participant at 4D Happy Hour. 4D Happy Hour is a much more casual and sort of informal format than this. First, because we happen every week. And here I'll drop the Zoom chat into. Why are you talking to me? There we are. There's the Zoom link for it. It's Fridays, every Friday, 3:30 Pacific time. I'll let you do the time conversion because I inevitably get it wrong for somebody. And most recently, a lot of new faces have been dropping in, which is always great. Always adds to the discussion. And interestingly enough, for the last, 2 or 3 weeks, we've really been having some pretty deep, kind of thoughtful conversations from time to time about the nature of 4D, about finding work in 4D, about what's working in 4D and what's not, about how to build your business. This is one of the few places I think where you can just drop in and for example, do anything from just say, hey, how do you make this work? And, share a screen and show us something. And, frankly, it's kind of like getting a code review from a group of people that actually know what they're talking about most of the time. Whether you like the answer or not, whether you agree with the answer or not, you'll get some good information and something to think about. And it's also pretty much the only place that you can go if you want to talk about the business of 4D, if you want to talk about being a developer, if you want to talk about being a consultant, or just ask questions about how do you do this in business? What do you do with a client like this? What do you do with a project like this? So that's that's an aspect of the community that otherwise the only option, or the better option, is of course when we're all at a summit and we can just go sit down someplace over a coffee or a beer and talk through that stuff. But absent that, I sincerely want to encourage you to just stop by and say hi sometime, or just tune in and listen and see what the rest of us are talking about. Everybody's welcome. There's really no dumb questions because we haven't found them all yet. And it'd be great to see you there. So, and good luck, Doug. I know you're going to do great.
Thanks, Kirk. I'd just like to echo that. That's why we mention it in each one of these meetings, that it's a great resource for 4D developers. If nothing else, just to, if you're struggling with one thing or another in your code, you'll be presented with about 10 different ways to go about solving that problem. And it's a very relaxed atmosphere. No one's gonna No one's gonna say it's terrible, you're doing everything wrong. So,
Yeah, I really try to shut that down, but it doesn't happen. So
yeah. So anyways, right. So great place to take part in the 4D community. Thanks, Kirk. And now over to Jim to talk a little bit about 4D.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Welcome from the 4D team on behalf of the 4D team. And as Kirk said, our thanks to Brent for organizing these 4D methods and for inviting me and Ad to participate. We really appreciate the opportunity to show what's going on at 4D that you guys may not know about sometimes. And like all of you, we're looking forward to Doug's presentation on user listing with ORDA. It's great to see that the recent presentations by developers on 4DMethod have been related to ORDA. And we're really happy to see that. So that's very cool. Lots of activity at 4D since our last user group meeting here. So I may take a minute or two longer than I normally do, but you have to bear with me because I have a special announcement at the end of my little spiel here that you have to wait for. I guess number one topic that's been going on at 4D is the release of V20 LTS on July 10th. So super excited about those features that are in V20. For those of you following the feature release cycle, this is tantamount, I guess, to the next iteration of the quarterly feature release cycles, with all the features added between V19 R8 and V20. And it's quite a few. And for those of you sticking to the LTS versions, you'll get to enjoy all the features that have been added into the product line since the release of V19 in July 2021. So 2 years ago. That's a lot of features. There are hundreds of new features since that release. And if it's okay with you, Brent, I'd like to take the next 4 hours to go over all those new features. Just kidding, I won't do that to you, but Brent has been great about discussing these features in the 4DMethod meetings and what's been happening with the feature release cycle. So please check out the 4D blog listing for more information. Complete feature release listing at blog.4d.com. And a reminder that next week we will present the V20 release webinar on August 9th. Will Taylor and Ad Comancher-Rensary will once again do a presentation on just some of the new features that are in the V20. We try to hit the highlights, so the attendance for those release webinars has been growing with every one. So I think Will and Ad really enjoy putting those together, and we love to see the developers coming to those. And then in addition to V20, I guess what like a 1B or something of that would be V20 R2 beta was released on July 12th, 2 days later. So now we're off on a new cycle of feature releases that will begin with V20 R2 and lead to V21 somewhere down the road. So it's encouraging for us and for our engineering team to see how many of our customers are taking advantage of feature releases so they can use the new features in their applications right away, not having to wait for V21, but R2, R3, R4, R5. So thank you for that. Again, blog.4d.com for all the new features coming in V20 R2. And there are some really exciting ones there. In addition to that release, the summit. So the 4D Summit 2023 will be held on October 3rd and 4th in the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia. We've chosen a unique setting at the Emory University Conference Center and Hotel. It's about 15 minutes or so outside of downtown Atlanta. Beautiful property, 23 acres, I think they said there. It's beautiful property, a great place for the summit. Lots of outdoor area there. We can sit and chat and have a beer. And for the party on Tuesday night will be great. And the cocktail reception on Wednesday evening. So I think it's going to be a really good venue for our summit, something that we're used to seeing. And for the past several months, of course, our team has been working hard on planning that summit. in Atlanta, and the Paris Summit, which will be held 2 weeks later on October 17th and 18th. These will be our first in-person summits in 2018. So those of you who have already registered, thank you for doing that. And if you were able to take advantage of the early bird pricing, that's great. There's still time to register. Of course, you can register right up to the day of the summit. And that happens. We have people who don't get around to registering, but if you can do it early, that's great. And if you have registered and haven't booked your rooms at the hotel, please go ahead and do that. We, of course, have reserved a room block there for our 4D Summit attendees, but that block is filling up. So I encourage you to book your hotel room as soon as possible. It's interesting to see how many US customers are planning to attend the Paris Summit, and even more international customers are planning to attend the Atlanta Summit. So I think there's some pent-up post-pandemic travel happening here, and people who want to go from Europe want to come to the US, and people in the US want to go to Europe. So we don't care which summit you go to, as long as you go to a summit, and it'll be great to see you there. You can see the entire agenda on summit.4d.com, and we'll be showing all that 4DV20 has to offer. And this is a slide that Brent just put up on the topics of the master classes, the seven master classes that we'll be presenting over the 2 days. I think most of you are aware of the people who are the presenters there. I've seen them in the previous summits or on world tours. They're the finest 4D experts that we have in our company. And we're proud to have them presenting, including Ad, who will be showing the latest tech notes later in this 4DMethod meeting. So I hope you can all attend. It'll be great to see everybody. We're totally excited about having you there and seeing you in person, and just getting to touch base with you and see what's going on with you again. So if you're still with me, thank you for sticking around. I did have a special announcement to make, and it is related to the summit. And we've invited the host of 4DMethod, Brent Raymond, to be our host and master of ceremonies at the Atlanta Summit. And I'm happy to announce that he has accepted. So Brent will get to be the MC. We was going to be the MC at the Chicago Summit in 2018. Never happened, of course, but we're now finally going to see him on stage. So thank you, Brent, for that. We're looking forward to having you kind of be the glue that holds things together, because we're a little out of practice with some, so we need your glue up there on the stage. It'd be awesome. But it's just another reason for people to attend. You know, if you're on the 4DMethod meeting, if you come to these meetings regularly, you'll know how important Brent is to the 4D community, and we really enjoy his participation in these meetings and at the summit. So that's it. That's it for me. Thank you, Brent, and thank you again. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we're totally excited to see you in Atlanta.
Thank you, Jim, and I do appreciate the offer to help be the glue. We'll see how sticky that glue is and what kind of sticky situations are created, but it'll be fun and exciting to be up on stage and certainly to see everybody. So yeah, so it should be very exciting. A lot of great topics at the summit as well. I mean, you know, looking at this slide, you know, if you only get the advanced training on dot query, there's so much to learn, such a deep usage of the new query language, scaling the web server, system workers. Again, I can really imagine people doing some interesting stuff with the system workers and so on. I was hoping that Jim was gonna give us some insights on the one more thing, but apparently it was
no.
Yeah,
For the one more thing session, you will have to attend.
okay.
Sorry, that's something I can't talk about yet, but I can guarantee you it's worth the price of admission to the summit.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
just the one more thing.
But yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, That's great, and hope to again see everybody at the summit. Sadly, won't be in Paris, but you know, maybe next time. If I do a good job this time, maybe I'll see you in Paris next time. So, but anyways, and if you you know, this year it's all about the master classes. But if you are missing presenting to the community or seeing community presentations, no worry, this is your spot for that. So if you have something that you would otherwise have liked to have shorn at the 4D summit, no worries, you can just pick a date here and show it off, or you can, like I mentioned earlier, just record your presentation and we can do it here. Like Jim mentioned, again, thanks Jim for all the news from 4D and for dropping the news about the MC at the summit. The version 20 just came out this month, last month, in the past month, with the major features being the WebSocket server, the quick network layer that was just in beta, but I think in R2 they're taking it one step further. Declared class properties, which is nice to be able to have strongly typed properties, attributes in your classes, and the ability to safely compare undefined values, which is has been a bit awkward. You had to code around that kind of thing in the past, but and just all kinds of great new features, including everything from the previous 19R releases. Plenty written about all of that on the blog and at the link here at the bottom of the screen, new 4D v20 LTS on the 4D website. So just mentioning about the blog, again, it is the place to go to see not only write-ups of the new features coming out in the R releases, but there's just also great example code on each of the articles. Most of them have an how do I application free test code, basically, to see what the new features actually look like. Just recently, there's an article about the WebSocket client that is in R2. So they're taking the WebSockets a little bit further, so that instead of just having a client on the client being a web page, you can, to my understanding, you have the ability to have the client be 4D itself. So you can tie 4D applications to each other using WebSockets, which is pretty neat. And then an article about the build 4D component, which is very interesting. It goes through an exhaustive list of everything that you can do with that component. Then another article on how they've bumped up the open SSL libraries in 4D to 3.1. That's great, you know, security being as important as it is these days, and staying current with things like OAuth 2 authorization, and brings me to the next article here. So they've been building up the 4D NetKit library. In this case, adding new features for OAuth 2 authorization, which then allows new features for sending Gmail for sending email and using the Gmail API. In that NetKit component class, there's a whole section for working with the Gmail API, the netkit.google. Makes it as easy as saying, just send an email, just like that code snippet down there. So again, just always a parade of very interesting and powerful things coming out in 4D. And you can read about them even before they're released on the blog. So, right. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ad to talk about the other great place to read about what can be done in 4D, the 4D knowledge base.
Thanks, Brent. Hi, everybody. As a reminder, I do this every time when I get a chance. So the knowledge base article, especially for the tech notes, are exclusive, at least for the first 12 months, is exclusively for partners. So if you are 4D partners, which I think all of you are, take advantage of that. Every month we will release 2 tech notes, and I usually post the published tech notes on the forums as well, making sure that everyone knows. And yeah, it's available worldwide for all partners. And for this 2 tech notes that I want to cover, this is coming from July tech notes. A few months ago, Thomas Mall did a great presentation on Method User Group and cover WebSocket. So, you know, because V20 is coming out, you know, it's already out. So Nat Doe is one of our tech support guy. Take opportunity to write, you know, more in-depth about WebSocket features in 4D. You know, a lot of time when we have this type of new features, we want to focus on teaching you how to use the feature effectively and give you enough example to be able to understand the content and the subject matter better. So he covers quite a bit of things, general background, the comparison between typical HTTP versus WebSocket, and some other information like WebSocket classes, how to use them, and with example that goes along with this. So hopefully, again, this feature will be part of your project in the future, hopefully, because WebSocket, I believe, has been something that many of our community have been asking for a long time. The second tech note is about handling errors in 4D. In the past, we had several tech notes that kind of cover this topic. Again, having deal with question and troubleshooting, you know, with on 4D problems for many years now, we always recognize that, you know, there's still a lot of people who are unfamiliar with the way 4D error handling does or works. So over the years, we added several features to help you do error handling in 4D, including in the version 20 R2 as well. But because of the timeline, we weren't able to include those new features into this tech note. But overall, the information that we provided in this tech note will cover all of the necessary general information about how you will go about handling your errors in 4D. A lot of time when we see an error, we have to think about many things, well, understand what the errors are and take appropriate actions to handle those errors. So this tech note will give you sort of general ideas and you know, enough features that you can use to handle those errors. So again, these 2 tech notes came from July. There will be 2 tech notes later on this month. So keep an eye on it, and I'll be seeing you guys again next time.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's the articles are always great. Both of these articles are very thorough on their particular subjects, and the example is very fun to see with the WebSocket, especially. I enjoyed that example code. It's new code for all of us in the community to work with the WebSockets, and it's it's tech notes like these that can really help you wrap your head around how it's supposed to be structured, the architecture of using the new WebSocket capabilities. And for all of us, we need to know how to handle to do our error handling as well. So there's, if nothing else, it's a great review of the current capabilities and the options that are available with 4D error handling. So thanks to Ad and his team for making these tech notes available to us all, and to all the tech tips that come out in the knowledge base. Yep, if you're not reading those, then you're missing out on a lot of important content. So, all right, thanks. And now on to our special presentation for this meeting. We have J. Douglas Cryer, Dougie. He's joining us today from Bedford in England. He calls himself a pedestrian programmer, but I think he'll show us some high-class work here today. Originally, he went to school at the Royal Academy of Music and Arts to study stage management. He came to know 4D as a user while an account manager later on at a telemarketing company. And his knowledge of 4D helped him to climb the ranks to IT director and consultant. And then in 1995, he started the Telekinetics Limited company that he still currently runs. Over the decade since, Dougie's practical approach to development has brought him experience in a variety of different industries. And today, Dougie will give us a tour of a component that he has developed over the years to provide basic functionality and applications, but the component is fully extensible for more advanced customer needs. So welcome to the 4DMethod stage today, Dougie.
Thank you. So do I share my screen now and
Sure,
kick in,
yeah.
or?
Yep,
Right.
go ahead. I'll stop my share and you can take it over.
Rightio. So I'm going to kind of race through the agenda that I had. I need more screens when I do this. So this is what you can see right now. I hope you can see it. Is basically a component area. So this whole user listing is a component that allows me to switch between the different table entities in the system and control different options up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you some of the basic functions as per the agenda. Then I'm going to go into some more advanced functions and show you different systems it's implemented in so that you get the idea of them. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of code. So I'm going to try and save as much time for questions towards the end as I can. So obviously, we've got various listings. We've got a list of all the tables that we've got down the side. I'm presenting here a system that I've been building recently for a company in the US. And so you basically have simple show subset, show all, omit subset functions. And these are built into the components. We've got add and new, which are callbacks to the host, so that the adding and the deletion are controlled by the host through callbacks. And then we've got a search editor, which allows us to do searches on names or any field in the database, a bit like the 4D search editor. And we can run that and it'll find any contacts. Obviously, there's nobody called Cryer, but that search editor has a little advanced features in it, so that you can, if you are picking a source, sorry, a field that has a lookup on it. Sorry, what I'm going to do, sorry, I was going to load this one. So here I've got an advanced query that I'm loading that I've previously saved. And you'll notice I've got brackets. So without the brackets, that query there is going to come up with some very weird results. But because what I'm trying to achieve here is I want to show all of the sales from July and all of the sales from June that are over £1,000. Sorry, $1,000. So if I run that now, I'm going to get my a different selection because I've got bracketing in there. And is that, I messed up, did I mess up my? Yeah. I don't know, have I done something wrong with my search here? Yes, okay. That's the result I should have got. So I have a date problem in one of the search criteria there. So but essentially bracketed searching allows you to do a lot more complicated things than you would do otherwise. There are also things like if you've got I've got a contract table here, and in that contract table, I've got some natural dates. So if I do a start date, I then get a pop-up because it's a date. So I can find everything that's got a start date of greater than or equal to the 2nd of the 8th, and it'll bring up this one here. If I'm doing a search on something like a product, where I've got a field that happens to be a product type, because I've linked it to a lookup list, I then see a lookup list for the options in there. So I can search for all the books and it'll bring that up, or I can search for all of the cards. It'll do that. And if you've got an option that has more than one option, so you do is in list, then you could also choose to have book and cards and include that in there. So these are just little things. Obviously so the component itself is past a particular structure so that the query editor can actually pull in those lookup lists. So that's slightly prescriptive because I've created my own little lookup list feature here. And each of those I map a lookup list to a table and a field and possibly even a property if that's an object field. So in this particular one, I've got product measures UOM size, and I can, if I go back to product and I did a query on measures, I've broken my query editor for some reason. That should be displaying an object field. Yeah, it is an object field, but not as in is equal to. So I can then put in UOM size, and I can see a pop-up here, and then I can find anything that's got centimeters in the UOM size, which this one has. Okay, so that's actually searching on my titles with for an object property rather than just a field. And that's because I was able to map it here. So what have we done? We've done find. We've also got up here, we've got a quick find. So we can put in this and it'll find for under various created bits. And I'll show you how that works when we look at the code. But it's basically you can put in a collection of fields to find on, and then that find bar will actually look at all those different fields. Set management. So if you've got a bunch of records and you want to go create a set for them, you can go, I want to create a new set from current selection, call it test set, really creative. You can make it public, or you can make it private, or if it, by default it'll be private to you, because this is you know, obviously different users will see their own sets and their own thing. And then you can load sets. I hope I haven't done exactly the same test Yeah, these are different sets. So if I then go and do manage sets, I could do a tester and the intersection of these two sets, and then run the operation, give it a test new set, run the operation, new set created, and then I can go my sets and go new set, and that's the intersection of those two. So obviously it's just managing sets that allow you to do that in there. Sort management. So there's a sort tool where you can go in and you can create your own sorts, and you create a new sort, and then you can pick a field, and you can ascending or descending, give that a name. And make it the default sort, and then basically, I mean, you could have just done that, but you could have made a more complicated sort. You can then attach it to a view, or you can just make it the default when you come in here and you show all, and it should have sorted that by, you know, these demos never work because I am, there you go, sort by forename. Yep. And printing and export. So within the tool, there is also a quick report, which obviously you'd expect. That's just calling standard quick report from 4D and a quick label. But we also got an export view, which allows us to leverage on Plugger's Excel component if you've got the license for it and installed, and then you can export to Excel, and it will then generate, you just create a file.
Yeah, it's a great plugin for working with Excel. You do a lot of Excel.
And that
fun
then
to get.
pops up, and you can then see the document that it's output. And because I've got a particular preference on, it's taken the style from the view and applied it to the export as well. So next, relate tools. So if I've got a bunch of selected contacts here, I can choose the relate, and this will show me all of the tables to which this selection is related, and the companies that, and it gives you a little indicator there. And there's again using the power of ORDA, because ORDA knows how many related records there are in the collection for that relationship. So it can literally just do that. In the past, in the old versions of this, in the classic mode, we actually had to hard code all of those relations we wanted to be accessible by the client. And then we couldn't really show them the number of records without a big cost. But because it costs nothing now to see how many records are in the relation, relatively speaking, we can show them how many there are, and we can go, okay, well, we got, for these 4 companies, we've got 6 addresses. Going back to the company, we've got 4 contacts. So obviously, when I chose those contacts originally, there was a lot that didn't have companies related to them. Views management. So this is one of the kind of like, if you like, I think between the query editor and the views, this is kind of one of the killer features. So what we can do here is we can actually amend or create new views. So we can go, we can create a new view that we can use for a particular purpose. So we're just going to have the forename, surname, and we're going to pick the company name as well. And we're going to just go in there and we're going to call that company as the header. We'll try and spell it right. And you can see here that the formula that is putting in there automatically is the relationship dot name from the company. So this is my particular relationships, but it doesn't matter if your relationships are named differently, it will show it that way. And you can specify the width of that, and you can specify the type and everything else around that particular thing. If you are, and then that, I've got that, and that's my new view. So that then allows me to create effectively, because I can now export directly from that view. It allows you to create a view for a particular export purpose. It's almost like a dumbed down quick report. Right, back to my list of things. So we've got a themes. So we can actually, you'll notice I've got pretty ugly theme in here. So I've set the font color a particular way on these sidebar items and on the labels on here. So this allows you to really mess around with the various items and set your colors to be really hideous if you so wish to. And then preview those changes and then decide you don't like that, so I'll cancel. And views can be, you can assign to, when you do a view, you can choose a theme for that view. So you could technically have a different theme for every listing and have a different theme applied to that view or to different views. So you know I'm in this view because it's horrendous colors or whatever. This is where you can apply the default sort and the default, and you can also say you've got the header height, the row height, use footers, view as public, or it's the default view. So in views where you have, for instance, figures, you can say, well, I want to have footers on that. And I want to take my total and I want to put a sum on it. And then you get a footer at the bottom that shows the total for that particular column.
Nice. Guy had a question. Can the relate open a second window within the selection? So for showing a second selection with the relation related.
So I've just gone over to.
When you pick the relation, you want to see both lists at the same time instead of replacing the one that's there.
Yeah. So this is a feature that not a lot of our customers use. So I've just jumped over to another to a live system, that a client live system. So if I've got this here, I've got this new window, same window concept appearing on my relate tool, because I've enabled it in this system so that I can actually go and I can do that, and then I get a new view with the related contacts for those. So it is possible to have run it in multi-process mode. Each one of these now is a separate process rather than just a worker, and it's entirely separate.
Nice.
So that answered that question.
Yeah.
So going back to, so while I'm in here, where am I? Oh, I've just lost my place. So if I go back to that project, there's very little functionality in it. So these other buttons, like download sales, for instance, that's a functional callback. There are some things where you would have mostly this is search editor, but if I go back to that application, which is actually a V18 application, so it's running an older version of the component, because the latest component's updated to a 19 something, but obviously this one hasn't been upgraded to 19 yet, so it's using a slightly older version. We've got features in here that we've pulled in, and also there are custom search window, because not everybody wants to use that search editor. Sometimes they just want a nice simple I just want to see all the customers. Boom. And so you can sort of like, there's got this concept of above the line, below line functionality. So anything below the line is built into the component and it's part of ULO. Anything above the line is basically a callback to the host. So the host is actually saying, I want this, and it's controlling everything about that particular search, and then calling the component to say, this is what the selection is. Likewise, with all of the action button functions are all host functions. The print function, I haven't got any host functions in there, but I did have in the other one. You'll notice in some of in another system, which is again much bigger, I've got above the line relates. So these are relates that are not natural joins within the system, because this is a legacy system. And so we're calling back and doing our own more complex process in order to get the related records. And that's again through a callback method that's actually applied. There are also callback methods that you can do via right contextual click. And again, those are back to the host, because you need a lot of control over something like this in the host. Otherwise it just becomes well, it's very good, but I can't do anything with it sort of thing. So we have advanced features. We even have, if you're logged in as developer, we even have an apply formula feature, which obviously is very dangerous and very powerful, so don't give it to your users. High-level reports is in the print here. So again, that's a callback to the, for this particular listing. So each listing might have its own, so something like customer orders, where we might have a callback to clone or complete, or we might have advanced functions. We might have a whole load of different things to split orders, to delete SKUs, to do various things like that. They're all callbacks. And then there are a bunch of other reports that might be driven by a whole menu system, because it's a much more rich environment, and this is a 25-year-old application and has a huge number of features in it. And obviously some of these things you want to be able to shrink them up, because you don't want always to see all the different things. There's a lot going on here. So where's that got us? Customizable toolbar. Right. So I was going to go into the entry screen part. So I'm going to pop over to yet another. This is like my test database, which I know a lot of people have seen, which I call contiguity, which a lot of people have seen. So this is not a classic database. This is a from scratch, if you like, a bit like Neurome. And this has the concept of the user entry. So the whole user entry, this whole toolbar now, is within the user entry screen, is all done again using ORDA. So rather than jumping out of order from the listing and jumping into a classic mode, which some of our older databases do, here we're actually coming in. The listing has its own, if you know anything about ORDA, you'll know that the list box controls its context for the listing, but it also has a context associated with it for the current record. That's not a good term. The selected entity. And this is using the context. So the entry screen will use the context for the selected entry in order not to pollute the list box context for the main listing. So when we're going through here, we're navigating next, previous, last of the selected record context, if that makes sense. And what it's doing is it's obviously changing any related records here. We can see files, we can see jobs, and this is not part of the presentation. This is just the entry screen that we've got there. It's really about these particular functions here. In the new Rome system, we had in sales, for instance, we have an extra button. And again, that's programmatically put on there to print invoices and print pick notes from the ULO thing. So, and there's, when you print an invoice, it will actually generate the invoice from that, and then it will save it against that particular invoice and show the details. Sorry, show the invoice created, which is done from a WordPro file. Right. So what haven't I showed with that? Right. So we're going to go now and look at implementation. So in a classic database, that's this is eye level, and what we're doing is we're just going into, we're double clicking on a record, and it's going directly into a classic non-order entry screen, which is just going through next record and previous record and everything else like that. In a an order situation, if we look at this here, first of all, before I go into that, I'm going to show you the component itself, which is a very lightweight 4 megabyte component. And it basically consists of few forms. So this is the main browser form that you have there. Okay, which has it has a base thing, and these are the buttons that appear across the top, which are just duplicated across as we need them. We then have our sidebar, which is all of those options we saw down the side for our, if I just put that there. That's showing these options we've got down the side here. This page is a listing, if you like. This page is for a web area in the event that we wanted to have a web area display, like details of what they, so in eye level, we basically show people adverts to say, this is the new features that have come into the system. So it's literally just the welcome screen that we have up there. So that, but you might use it for many other things. On the next page, we have a sort of a no access. If they don't have access to it, it says you don't have access to this feature. And on the final one, this was something we added relatively recently. This is essentially a subform area. So the subform area was something I realized that there was because I wanted to, I thought, well, in something like this, we could have popped open a window for preferences. We could have popped open a window to do other forms. But what I decided to do was have a subform area that can actually show, for instance, my preferences. So my preferences, this is a host form that I've then published to be available to the components. And then I can put things like ISBN code settings, lookup list settings in here, users and groups, big comma settings that I need for connecting in this particular instance to an e-commerce site, and Gmail address settings. So this is for this is prior to the component, the thing that they've just released for 4D R2. We had to write our own Gmail access. So we have to do the setup for OAuth, which involves a callback back to 4D, and it's a heck of a process, really. And this is just their company details and the invoice template. And so we also used a subform in this particular one for doing an asset grid. So again, this is a subform, but we're using within the subform, we were able to use a search. So we can look for a creator, run the query, and find the assets for that particular one. And it reflects in the actual listing as well as in the here. So anything that's done in here, kind of these two are tied together. So if I have those selected, when I go to the grid, those are the ones that are selected. Right, so that's basically the component. Obviously, as well as that inside the component, as well as this main form, which is the main component area, we also have the tools for editing the theme, the tools for the export view, the form builder I'll show you in a minute. This is my input template. So this I'll show you in a moment. This is for the ULO input screen. The query editor line, because that's a line on the thing. Wrappers, query save, step manage, all the things you saw. That's under development. That's a more visual representation of the set manager that we want to re-implement in this that I had in an older system. The sort manage, the view edit, and the detail view edit. So these are all. So it's actually fairly lightweight component in terms of what's in there. In terms of methods, there are, how many methods are there? I don't know really. Go add. So there's probably about 129 methods underneath the hood there. So I'm guessing you want to see some code. So I'm going to go back to contiguity, and I'm going to show you how we initiate all this stuff. So what I've got basically is a startup method that I have to tell the component the table titles. So that's calling it, and it basically calls it, and it picks up all of the hosts, tables, and fields, and the structure of the database. I then can set a logo. So you'll notice at the bottom of this one, I've got Telekinetics logo. So I can set the logo that I want to appear there. The theme that I want to set, which is all to do with the buttons. So you'll notice I'd had different colored buttons, and they're all, so there's different colored buttons, and you could put your own buttons in there and then put that in a folder and use the buttons in the other parts. We've got sidebar theme, which we've just set the font and the color. So, and then we've also got a filter method that we set up. So this is an example of a callback that we're calling to do the filter, which is kind of automatic, but if you call back, you can do a very special filter on a particular field by putting in the handle and a case for it here. So this is pretty much how all the callbacks are managed, by doing callbacks to methods where we're passing collections and parameters. This is our row context. So I don't really have one in here to do that. I'll double click. So that's our ULO modify. So when I double click on a record, it just runs through here and opens the window and goes into my generic input. I call everything input, and then it then picks up the ULO records. So there's a few concepts like my total records in my component is called ULO records. So it's form.ulo records, form.selected records. And so just coming through here, I've got some disabled actions here. I can initialize my sidebar, which is what I do before I then I start filling in all the different bits. So if I ran that and then I have contacts, companies, addresses, let's say I didn't want companies to appear anymore. Contact, it's gone. So I could have these optionally appear by user just simply by wrapping these in cases based on which users logged in. So you can extend this, and in fact, we do that with some of our other systems where we've got a lot of user permissions, and only some users are allowed to see some tables and access certain things, so they don't see everything on the sidebar. But again, that's all controlled from the host. This is the host I'm looking at here, and I set up all these things. So each one of these groups has a header, and it has a name, a handle for the header, and then I attach each of the contact and everything else by saying parent is the header. So that actually lends itself to an interesting thing, because you can actually do cascading. Yeah, because
cool.
you can say a sub item its parent is products and stock for warehouses, but it's also a parent, and it shows you the warehouses and the stock for that warehouse in that particular thing.
Cool.
So if I look at if I just go to, there was a how many in for time? Right.
Oh, you're fine.
So
Yeah.
I went in and I'm just going to go and I'm going to delete a which one? So I'll delete this list, this input, and I will also delete the input method. And then I'll just run this form build method here. And this is calling the component. And it's bringing up a form that was in the component. I can choose a template from the host. And I can say, I want to do job item. I want these particular fields. It's not doing my foreign keys and my IDs. And I'm going to click OK. And it's going to generate that form. And you'll notice that in that form, I've got this on page 0. I've got this subform from the component. Okay. Now in there, I'm actually, because I haven't worked out how to do this yet, I'm just going to put this in, and I'm going to go case of right. So if I now go to on this, and I go to job items, that's the form I just pulled in. And I'm navigating through all the records in there. And this was that's that being generated for me there. Now, as well as the sidebar, we also had to specify the appearance, and we also had to specify the buttons. And the button set, this is for the main listing. Here are all the buttons, and we're basically building a collection and telling it create these buttons on the top of it. So if we didn't want to have show subset and omit subset, for instance, then when we run that again, we don't have those buttons. So this is pretty much customizable as to what you want to put on there. You can put your own buttons on there with your own callbacks and your own features. And it just, what this does for us, I mean, we use it as we don't sell this component at the moment. We use it as a USP, and we use it as a way of generating applications really quickly. And so I'm really showing it as a what can be done rather than a, but I have won a few contracts because of this tool, because people have gone, well, we want a bit of that. And I'm mentoring somebody, and I've just given it to him because he's been buying time off me for mentoring. So
it's quite a capable component. There's definitely a lot of work that goes into just managing this kind of flexibility in a component. But given that you can take advantage of your development across different clients just by working in the component, the shared component, it's I can see that it can be very advantageous.
Yeah. So the buttons on the input screen, they were also controlled again by a collection. And when it's a new record, I'm only showing the save record and the cancel record. And when it's an existing record, I'm showing a bunch of other buttons. And then on certain tables, I'm then putting in a history button. So that one is company. So if I went back to in here, I go back and where's my browser? I go to companies, and I've got this history button here, which just doesn't do anything apart from do a callback to run the host history method. I think that's pretty much that for that part of it. I do have one more thing, which is the next thing that we are basically, we're going web. So the next challenge was to, and this is talking to exactly the same database, and the next challenge is to basically say, how do you convert all of that to the web? So we basically have a query editor, and we can go for name TE, and we can go bring that up. We've got views. We've got a relate tool, so we can relate that to companies. We've got the ability to edit views and put different fields on there. And basically, it's the ULO on the web type thing. So obviously, this is not done entirely in 4D. This is leveraging on a REST component that we've built and using building components, if you like, within Angular in order that we can have nice things like being able to go next record, next record, next record. It's more interesting on contact. So in the contact one, I've got that kind of building up that same screen, if you like, and files and jobs and various things like that. If I go show all, my first record actually has some files against it and some mobile numbers, and I can add a new mobile number. Etc. I've got my company and my address here, and it's trying to basically mirror what we're doing in high level in 4D.
Have you dabbled in the classes yet? It looks like a lot of your component calls could really leverage.
I've had some mixed experiences with the classes. I mean, this salutation here is a computed value, and we had to make, when we realized computed values were there, we had to make some adjustments so that we were actually showing the computed values in our interface here, so exposing them. But I kind of like, I've been taking it very, very slowly on that. And we didn't want to do too much with it until we've actually made sure that everything works. most of this is just really, like I say, pedestrian code. It's in the component. It's not. We work on we're not, everything's nested to about 1 or 2 levels, and there's nothing terribly clever going on under there. So we try to keep it simple, and we didn't want to. We played around with some classes and we had mixed results, and so we haven't really put in a lot in the component side, and it really doesn't need it. There's so we've kind of done it in the host a lot, but not so much in the components yet.
John Foster asked, would you show your clairvoyance text search? I find contains with @ symbols are still quite slow. How do you manage contain searches if you do?
Right, so my clairvoyance, it's not it's not really clairvoyance, but let's take an example. I think, what have I got set up in terms of clever searches here? Nothing much. I think in here, I think I did one where I'm doing sales. I think I did. So if I try and find sales that have, that's basically found 76 orders, which will all have illness and the believer in there. Okay, and it's done via. So if you like, that's a fairly small selection though. So in my ULO on here, if I look at the sales, I've put in, this is my find fields that I'm passing to the sidebar to say these are the things this find bar will work on. And I wanted to search on host order ref, source, status, and then that's a relationship through sale item to variant on code, and through sale to sale item to variant to product on product name. I'm not sure if that answered the question. If I go back to contiguity and I look at contact, where I'm searching just on forename and surname, I've only got 108,000 records in here, so it's not a huge database. But if I put in, it automatically wildcards at the end. But if I do that, that's basically done a search and found 1,711 records out of that 108,000. But, unless I had millions of records in there, I don't think it would really prove anything, would it? And this is also running, that's also running locally. So again, that's not a great example. But if I go to something where, I'm trying to think, what have I got? This is live. How many records? That's only 4,000. I don't really have the volume to show you a good search on here.
No, we were just looking at the host, right?
Yeah, this is just the host.
So in order to step into any component code,
yeah, but the component code's not really doing anything with the clairvoyance because it's the host you're looking at. So in terms of this field, I'm just telling it which fields to look at, and then it's literally just doing a search. It's not clever. It's just doing a search on all of those fields, every single one of them. I mean, I can step into it, but I don't think it's really gonna. This particular one, I think I'm running the component. Let me just check. Yeah, 'cause, 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 ' Yeah, this is a reference to the uncompiled components. So if I do a come in here and it's going to run.
What's that part of the code doing there? It's
This is basically just doing a collection to, it's adding collection to the search. So just let me just it's finding the sidebar action for find, and then basically, and then what it's doing here. This is the line where it's actually doing the search.
I see.
So we're basically returning the DS. It's going to return 729 records, and it's doing that find on those because I only specified 2 fields, and it's doing that's the parameter plus the wildcard.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. I imagine before ORDA, you were doing using a lot of pointers for this kind of thing.
Yeah. So essentially, I've in the setup, I've told it which fields you're searching on, create that as a collection, and that can be a chained relationship to a field on another table, and then because it's order and it's dot notated. And then within the component, I'm literally just running it. There's an event that's saying you're running a find, and the end of it is literally just this, and then I'm returning that back to it so that it can then display the 729 records.
Nice.
Did that answer the question?
I believe it did.
I'm kind of done unless anybody's got any other questions. I did want to do this within an hour, so I think I achieved that and a little bit more. So I'm open to.
It's exciting that you've been able to translate this kind of a flexible core to your applications to the web, or at least you're moving towards that. I can see how many companies they'd find that very attractive.
Yeah, the web things like that's where our future. We see that's where our future is for certain systems, particularly multi-tenanted systems. So we've been working on a number of different things. This is an earlier iteration of the thing, and it's quite different. It's using different tools in there, and but it's no less complicated. But we learn so much. We learn so much about every iteration, and we're trying to make it as reusable code as possible, so that we can just so we don't have to rewrite everything. Even those little like generating a simple form, well, yeah, it's not sophisticated what I showed there for generating that form, but it does the job for now, and it saves me if I've got 20 fields, it might save me half an hour. And those forms that I've created, they're not fields, they're form.selected record.description. It's the order way of doing things. Likewise, when you've got a more complicated screen and you kind of have to then add these in, but these are basically form.selected record.relationship to bring in all the related records. And this is how we feel order should be done. Because you want to, here you've got all of the jobs, the contact jobs, and then this is the selected job items.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. So building a screen it's so much easier than old classic 4D. So much easier.
Mm-hmm.
But it just takes a lot of getting your head around how it actually works and where things are, and not making mistakes like navigating through the context of your list box instead of using the context of the selected record. And those lessons are out there. They're in blogs from 4D, but unless you look for them and you follow them and understand them, you can miss a few tricks and you can end up making the context of a list box very polluted and very inefficient.
Have you gotten into generating forms, using objects and JSON to have them loaded from disk?
I really haven't, and that's where the pedestrian programmer comes in. It's easier for me just to generate the forms I want to be able to use.
Right.
And there are some use cases for generating forms kind of like that can then be pulled in, done that way. But generally speaking, I will just generate a simple form. What I was doing before was I was creating a form, a simple form. I was calling it, and before I was just doing that. But because of order, I then have to go into each one of these and I have to go, okay, but that's not what I want to call it. So it's form dot selected record
Mm-hmm.
dot title. And I have to do that 10 times and I'm already bored, which is why we created the little form creator.
I noticed that these are largely table forms. Are you working towards using project forms instead?
Well, some of the forms had to be project forms because if you are doing our template for this input that we used, that's a project form.
Mm-hmm.
We have a preferences form, which is a project form that had to be shared, published as a subform, so that in order that the ULO can then use it in the listing. So this is similar to one in the new Rome system. And so we do use them, but to me, this is all about filing. I want the forms to be relevant to, I want my input form for contact to be under contact. So I know they're trying to, it's kind of like a kind of, some people are saying, but until they give us a better way of filing forms, because this thing about creating folders just doesn't work. It's because it's just nonsense because they're not real folders. It's not like when you go into your Visual Studio Code and you're looking at all your Angular stuff and you're looking at, so here I have these are these listings, that these are my views that I have for the Angular stuff, and there's my contact detail, and there's my HTML, which is that page that I showed you, and then there's the component that does all of the code behind it, and there's the listing, and the listing is literally saying it's a smart list, and that's calling a component that then shows that listing. So it's much simpler. There's not much code in there at all. But until you can file in the same way as this with project forms, I see it's more convenient, better to hold them if they're specific to a contact, to hold it in the contact as a contact form.
Yeah, and as far as I know, there's no obvious way to programmatically control the folders in the 4D Explorer, or to search them. Perhaps you can.
No, you have to get down and dirty and write code to that. the code in the ULO that to generate that form, for instance, is it build form? I think no, it's ULO build form. So this was a joy in its own right. So this is the form. So we pick up the template right at the top. Once we open this window and we choose the template and the spacing and everything else like that, which some of which we can pass as parameters. And then we go through here and we make sure, and you have to make sure things like you've set your form method, because by default, if you haven't set a subform method, then when you get down to writing it, this all goes badly wrong. But you're basically having to create that file and send the form method text to it. Because this set method set code is a bit hinky. It doesn't like the forms anymore. So you have to get down and dirty and do that. You can't set the form method of a form. Well, you can, but it has to have existed before. So if it wasn't one against the template, it won't work when you actually then template it through. Okay, so I think I've talked enough. Have we got questions that we need to answer?
Yeah, let's see. If anybody has any questions or comments, you're welcome to unmute
Trying to find the comments
or put them in the chat. But yeah, this
I can't find the chat. Where's the chat? Oh, there it is. Right. So there are some questions, I think.
Michael LaRue says bravo, and I would echo that. Really excellent presentation and first-rate programming. Great job. Yeah, it takes a lot of work to make the interface look that easy. To have it look cohesive. That's right. John Foster said the component seems to do all the heavy lifting. Nice work.
Yeah, that's the idea. The component needs to do all. It does try and do all the heavy lifting.
What? How quickly? If a new client came to you, and I'm sure some of this is trade secret. We wouldn't want to give away your onboarding time. But how quickly does this allow you to roll up your typical customer application?
So Neurome, this application here, I'm just started the 4th month of building this application with this client. It's dependent on his time, which is very limited. He's a publisher in Middle America, and all of this has been built probably 2 to 4 days a month over the last 3 to 4 months. So
Nice.
there's probably so the bulk of it was shelled out, but obviously there was a lot of very tricky things. So this asset grid was a tricky thing in its own right. This was a couple of days. Most of the stuff, throwing together these listings and stuff like that, are just really very simple. I've got some errors there, so I've obviously.
The grid, are you using a list box for that or something else?
No, this particular grid, I mean, this is where it starts to go into the complicated, because that's actually it's a
web page.
It's a published subform, because we're pulling it into ULO as a subform. Okay. And then each of those blocks is its own form. So this is a subform, which has a subform. So there's 3 levels of subform here that are combined in order to show that thumbnail picture, and in order to get to our thing, because we are this is the lowest level, which is the actual thing. And then these are the iterations of the thing within the grid, which is, that's the grid. So each one of these is essentially a thing in its own right, and then it pops open here and we can go navigate through. These are non-viewable items.
Yeah. I assume John Foster is talking about this stack of subforms, but he said you should do a tech note on this in particular. Yeah,
we use this technique of subforms and subforms. Actually, I'll tell you who's really good at this. Kirk has done a lot of work on subforms and parents and child, but we use this technique of subforms and subforms. That's essentially what we've done with the query editor. So the query editor itself is made up of, I think, 3 layers, because you've got the items within it. Each line is a subform, because way back we tried using a list box for the query editor, but when you want to make things appear and pop-ups go on there, it's just not flexible enough. So subforms are really the only way to do it, so that you can have the flexibility to have all those little brackets and things like that appearing. So the your query editor line detail, that's your little pop-up, that's your little extra, there's your main field, and then you've got another that shrinks, and you've got a property field if it's an object. You've got your pop-up there, you've got your brackets here and here at the end and beginning of each line. You've got objects here for date and for Boolean. If it's a Boolean field, you've got a checkbox there to check, a delete button. So all of that has to be then thrown into a subform that's then used by the wrapper object, which is then used by the editor itself.
Roger Reed had a question, just getting back to the where you were showing the method set code. He asked if you could clarify the last comment about the method set code. And I think it's just getting into how.
So the method set code in a project database, it's very specifically, I haven't got the reference to hand, but if you go to the manuals, I don't know if this is the right reference. This is probably legacy stuff. It says here, when method set code, is this the one about the, this doesn't talk about project, is it? What version is this?
That's 20.
Oh, it's V20.
Yeah.
It should talk about it. Yeah. Creating a new method command only possible for database methods, triggers, and project methods. Yeah, you can't do it for form methods. It's not strictly true. You can't, well, actually, that statement is true. Creating a new method with this command is only possible. You can actually use it to set the code of an existing form method, but you will hit problems if that form didn't have a method. Yeah, it won't automatically create it. So it's problematic. So it's best not to rely on it, because you'll basically get back an error saying, oh, it's not there. And there's another weird thing that we discussed on Happy Hour, whereby it might actually create it, but then when you go to actually use it, it comes up with this message saying, oh, there isn't actually a method, or there's already a method existing. Do you want to use it, or do you want to overwrite it? It's kind of a weird anomaly with form methods. So it's best to just do that coding underneath and create the files and make sure that your property is set to the method.
Yeah, it seems like working directly with the files is with the project databases is now the preferred means.
I look at I'm not to be too critical, but when I see things like that, and I go, so basically, they just got to a point where it's like, oh, we can't work out how to do that easily, so we won't do it.
Yeah.
And there's a few of those gotchas out there. And whether they'll come later and include the ability for it to do that, because to me, there's no reason why under the hood it couldn't be done. If we can do it via code, then it could be done. So it's
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. You know, it's not that it can't be done.
It's that they haven't had time, and there are more pressing priorities for
Right.
4D to do, and it's not like they probably also go, well, how many people use that? You know, it's and it's fair. It's fair comment. You know, the amount of stuff that 4D have produced over the last period, and they can't do everything.
Right.
You know, because you can't satisfy everybody, and so sometimes you just have to find another way of doing it, and that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If there's
Okay.
anybody that has any additional comments or questions, now is the time. But just want to say thank you so much for a great presentation, and clearly many years and decades of work went into this component, and it's I'm sure given back to you over time as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so
it's definitely given me a lot back. And I know everybody's got their own slant on building their own shell and building their own thing, but this was you know, doing it in order was a revelation. The previous iteration in classic code was nearly 5 times as large a code base with less functionality.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Michael LaRue saying, are you going to be at the happy hour for additional discussion?
This week I am going to be at the happy hour. I've been off for a few weeks because social things and holidays, but I will be at the happy hour on Friday night. Yes.
Great. Well, thanks again for the great demo. Again, if you want to know reach out to Telekinetics. That's the website there, telekinetics.com.
Yeah, always open for business.
Always open for business. That's good point. And thank you so much for the great demo again, and thank you to everybody for attending, and to 4D for their roles in the meetings.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
To Kirk for the happy hour, and for hosting the happy hour to have something to talk about there in that section. But yeah, awesome. Well, any feedback is appreciated. Reach out to me. Also, thanks again to our Patreon supporters. Beyond that, yep, great job with the presentation. We'll see you guys next time.
Great. Thank you very much, Brent.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.